Today, the 1970s is known for its good music, bell-bottoms, and high gas prices. But one of the biggest things about the decade people always seem to forget has nothing to do with pop culture and is all about the weather.
It is simply the blowing, drifting snow and temperatures that will be, in many cases, setting new all-time records.
Conditions out here are absolutely unbelievable.
Stay off highways and roads today unless it's an emergency.
For the most part, it certainly doesn't look like a snowplow has been here.
The storm has dumped 11 inches.
During this era, the United States was home to some of the worst blizzards we have on record. And one thing you gotta remember is that the 70s wasn't like it is today, where most people already drive SUVs and trucks that have four-wheel drive as standard. Instead, people were reliant on big American sedans to get them through the elements. The type of car that has a 455 up front and 20 feet back, there's one wheel spinning.
Days a week before last.
You just sort of stranded here.
There's not too much you can do about it,
Needless to say, a lot of people were getting stuck in the snow. And it was during this time when the general public started to recognize the usefulness of a four-wheel drive vehicle.
From 6 of the hospitals in Grand Rapids put out the request late this morning for people with four-wheel drive vehicles to help get hospital employees to work.
And soon, automotive manufacturers started producing more and more four-wheel drives to help fill the growing demand, giving us several classic 4x4s, many of which are still popular to this day. Which is why today, we're going to be counting them down. These are the top 10 four-wheel drives of the 70s, all of which would have made you very popular during those cold winter storms of the era. Starting us off right with the International Super Scout II. Despite International Harvester mainly being known for tractors today, they once made street cars, and believe it or not, they were even active in racing, entering modified Scouts into races like the Baja 1000, where they were very competitive and even won their class a few years. And to celebrate their success, International decided to make street versions of the Scouts they used. The Super Scout included removable cloth doors and roof for weight reduction, roll bars for safety, and even your choice of two V8 engines, the 304 and the 345. Wrapping the exterior was a unique striping package, very reminiscent of the decals used on the race versions, giving this Scout a very aggressive overall look.
Next time winter looks like this, fight back with this. Scout. Anything less is just a car.
Next up is the Dodge Macho Power Wagon. Now, the Power Wagon itself was already a serious truck for its time, but you gotta remember, this was the 70s, the era of flashy cars like the Trans Am. And the Power Wagon, while a good truck, was very plain in its appearance. The Macho package would change that though, giving it a custom paint job, roll bars in the bed, and even custom off-road wheels with aggressive tread tires. As for the engine, the 440 would only be an option for 1977, and after that, the biggest engine you could get was the 360. And while it's unfortunate the big block didn't stick around for the entire run, it's still a very cool truck. So cool in fact that back in 2016, Ram unveiled the concept Macho Power Wagon that many people are still waiting for to this day. Next up, the Toyota Land Cruiser. Throughout the 1970s, the Land Cruiser would see much growth in popularity, with some of the best sales numbers Toyota had had up to that point. But the Land Cruiser story actually begins over 20 years earlier during the Korean War. When the United States needed more Jeeps than the contractors could supply, Toyota stepped up to build some Jeeps themselves. These Toyota Jeeps would evolve over time into the Land Cruiser we all know. So if you've ever wondered why Toyota makes a utility vehicle that looks a whole lot like a Jeep, now you know that was kind of the whole point. Now for another popular Japanese model, the Subaru Brat. First debuting in 1978, the Brat, or Bi-Drive Recreational All-Terrain Transporter, came with a 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine pushing 78 horsepower. But while the Brat wasn't fast, it made up for it with the novelty factor, like the rear-facing jump seats mounted directly in the bed. These seats might have been the only reason people liked the Brat then, but they actually served an important purpose. With the seats mounted back there, it defined the Brat as a personnel transporter, meaning it could avoid the 25% import tariffs the US implemented on compact trucks, keeping the price lower than the close competition. Going into this video, I knew I wanted both the Ford F-100 and the Chevy C10 on this list. The only problem was I couldn't figure out what slots they should fill. And after some thinking, I decided the best thing to do would be to have them share the number 5 slot, which is convenient considering these two trucks do have a lot in common. For starters, both were offered with big block and small block V8s, as well as some 6-cylinders. Both competed in multiple off-road races of the era, and both had a seemingly limitless amount of versatility, with several versions being built designed to tackle any task. But probably the biggest similarity these two trucks share is the massive popularity and fan base surrounding them. It's really no wonder why both of these trucks are basically still in production to this day. Just goes to show how much a good rival can push you to be better. If you're enjoying the video so far, then you might consider subscribing. That way you can see more videos like this more often. And while you're at it, go ahead and press that like button. I know it seems like a monotonous task, but it does really help us out. Next on the list, the AMC Eagle. One thing you might have noticed so far is that most of the four-wheel drives from the 70s is either a truck or a utility vehicle. And AMC noticed this at the time and decided to build a four-wheel drive that was just as practical and comfortable as a sedan. First debuting in 1979, the Eagle was a unibody wagon with a slight suspension lift for light off-roading. If this overall look seems familiar, it's because most modern crossovers have similar proportions. In fact, most people consider the Eagle to be the first crossover SUV. However, it is worth mentioning that another version of the Eagle came out later on, this time as a sports coupe, which kind of makes the Eagle the first crossover SUV and America's first off-road sports car. Next is the Toyota SR5. Known globally as the Hilux, this Toyota has become the embodiment of toughness. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen people do durability tests on these, and the amount of abuse these trucks can take and still drive away from ranges from impressive to just completely unbelievable. You know, a lot of the vehicles on this list, it's fairly common to see them on the road from time to time. Most of them are very desirable, and people are willing to put in the wrench time to keep them running. But not only are these trucks still on the road, you can tell that they've been in constant use since the day they rolled out the factory. And that level of reliability demands respect from all of us. Next up, the Chevy K5 Blazer. This is one of those four-wheel drives that instantly comes to mind when talking about the 70s. The key to the Blazer's success was combining the advantages of a utility vehicle with the comforts typically only found on a truck, such as air conditioning and automatic transmissions. They did this by starting with a K10 pickup and shortening the wheelbase down to 104 inches. Not only did this cheapen production by utilizing a pre-existing platform, but it also allowed the Blazer the ride on the good reputation Chevy trucks had, making the Blazer an instant sales success, outselling other utility vehicles on the market at that time, despite being much bigger than all of them. At number 2 is the Jeep Golden Eagle. Based on the CJ5 and CJ7, the Golden Eagle package came with a number of upgrades compared to the base model. For starters, it drastically changed the appearance, giving the Jeep a massive eagle decal right on the hood. Plus, the words Golden Eagle were put in a number of different spots on the exterior. But the appearance wasn't the only thing to get upgraded. The package also included several practical upgrades for off-road use, like the steel bumpers front and rear, that had removable sections in case you get in a tight squeeze on the trail. The front bumper also included mounts for your winch, but you had to buy the winch separately. All of these upgrades combined basically made the Golden Eagle the Ford Raptor of the 1970s, and is still popular to this day. Now for our top slot, the Ford Bronco. Originally debuting in 1966, Ford's goal with the Bronco was to make it cheap, simple, and tough, which they achieved so well they continued making the first generation for over 10 years. How they managed to make it so cheap was through some very creative design decisions, like the doors for example. Notice how the skins are completely symmetrical? This meant they only needed one press to stamp both doors in the factory. Another cost-cutting decision was with the glass. It being completely flat meant they didn't have to spend extra money bending it into shape. It was thinking like this that gave the Bronco a price of only $5,000, or $29,000 when adjusted for inflation. It's too bad this mindset isn't still around today, considering the new Broncos cost twice as much as that. Well guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks for watching, subscribe, like, and hope to see you next time.